welcome to Sales Manager Academy. We just came in. So, cool news. I finally finished. I actually have the document I was talking about for the candidate flow process. Uh, I didn't make that one live yesterday like I was expecting to or wanting to, because I hadn't finished tweaking some of the document style. Kind of like some formula, right? So when you enter it, you don't have to enter the rest of the information manually. It'll automatically pop up and drop down menus. Um, so have that available and gonna have the page available for download today. I just after I jump off of this, it's gonna be a busy day, but it will be up tonight. I'm gonna send out the emails and I'll post about it. So pretty excited about that. Because right now it's just like a candidate flow sheet where you just have the headers, so you kind of know what to put in there. And it's got like some documentation to it, like notes on the sheet itself, kind of describing what each one is for and what you want to do with it. This will give, I think, a better breakdown of what should be happening. I also added a couple more pages that include breakdowns, so high level breakdowns of number of candidates applied, and how many are in each section and percentage of each section completed. So that's really the most important aspect of it, because I remember when I did this for that company that I've talked about, that was the hardest thing because there wasn't any way to easily, from a high level view, see where a market's candidates were at, as far as a percentage of people that had completed like the assessments, how many people we have in background, how many, right? So there was no way to be able to see that from a high level view. Everything had to be put in manually, and obviously that takes a lot of time to do. So automate it, have a process in place that will automatically spit that information out as it's updated in real time. So you can get it, and that's the beautiful part. Now, obviously, the document's going to be up. You'll be able to get it and use it for yourself. So if you're a small company, if you're kind of struggling with candidates, and more so people falling off the interview process with your company, oftentimes it's because there's a lack of transparency. There is no process in place, and you're expecting either your field leaders to do that on top of everything else that they're doing, right? So their sales and operations, or your HR department's just being overwhelmed with everything that's coming through. So people tend to fall through the cracks. So if you're trying to see, this will give you a really good breakdown, and you can see what interview process you're losing most of your people in, so that you can adjust as needed. And that's the beautiful aspect of it, because of that transparency when you're going through the flow. That's something that a lot of people don't think about because they just think, okay, I just got to see how many people apply, how many people don't. And when you got a system in place, when you got a process in place, it's just like any other sales development, any sales methods, sales frameworks. Once you have it in place, it makes it easier to see what area you're struggling in, what step of the process needs to be adjusted, so that you can correct it now instead of later. Because it may seem like a small problem when you're a smaller organization, but as you grow, that issue balloons and becomes a much bigger issue for everybody involved. And it was one of those when I created it and I did it, everybody was just astonished at how many people we were letting fall through the cracks in the interview process. On top of that, if you're a company that does like assessments to see if somebody's a fit for your organization or not, it gives you a good idea like how many people in a certain market, right? Because you can get to a point where you can categorize it and even have it broken down by regions and markets, and you can see what areas you're getting qualified people for, but your leadership, your field teams are telling you they're not getting the qualified candidates. And you can see, okay, they're coming in, that's not the issue. But this other area that's not having an issue getting people and they're doing very well, they have a lower pool of candidates that are qualified for the positions, but they're doing better. So let's see what they're doing so that we can actually replicate that in other areas. Um, because when you have data to back things up, it makes the conversation a lot easier. I remember when I was doing it for improving sales, the metrics I was using was based off of close rate for my locations that had a shopper tracker, right? A device that actually tracked the number of people coming in and out of the store. Granted, it's not 100% because you obviously have your own employees are going to have to walk in through that door. So it kind of throws it off, but it's not like it's going to throw it off 50%, right? Like be realistic. And I used to tell my staff that it's like realistically, maybe give or take 10%, if that, right? If you have 200 door swings, your people aren't coming in and out of the door 20 times when you have a staff of three people. Like, be realistic, okay? Because it's not like it's counting them twice when they leave, when they enter and they leave. It actually counts them once, right? So it knows somebody came in, somebody left. So that's a count. Um, and it's able to do that for you. So you have a better idea, right? And you're able to track close rates. And I used to tell my team, because one of the stores I had thought they were, killing it because they were doing more than the other stores in the area. And I was like, yeah, according to your close rates, though, we're not even close to cracking what we could actually achieve. And when I was finished with that location, they had almost doubled their performance. And it wasn't like they almost doubled it for a month. No, they were continuously closing at a much higher clip and they were consistently 200%, almost 200% to quota when I was finished with them. The only months that they weren't, where they were closer to about like a 20 to 30%, was during the holiday season when it was naturally a lot more traffic. But this is something that they didn't realize was actually happening. We were just letting too many people leave and not being taken care of. And the data proved, hey, boom, we're missing a lot and there's something going on. And it's going to be a mix of obviously budget for staffing. And also, we need to work on our workmanship a little bit. We need to work on our salesmanship, on our craft. Uh, and we have to have something that's replicatable, easier, because obviously it's different. I remember when I took over the store, I think it was one manager, and I had, I think, five employees, five or six employees at that location. When I left, I believe the store was at one and one, so one manager, two assistant managers actually, and like 13 or 15 employees, right? So that's a big jump. And it was consistently, it wasn't like that was during the holiday season. It was a consistent amount of staff that we had at that location. Uh, so I had at my first region as many staff as locations or markets that were twice my size, right? So think about that. I was in a smaller area, but I was performing almost at the same clip as areas that were twice my size. There's a lot that can change and a lot that you can do when you have the right leadership and the right mindset and you're proactive about training and developing your people. It goes a long way. It really does. And that's where we see missteps when it comes to our leaderships because we expect them to do everything. And the thing is that there's a lot of leaders out there that don't know where to start and they get so overwhelmed with everything that they just get stuck in the minutia, right? They get stuck looking at the tree instead of trying to look at the forest. Uh, and then everybody else is because everybody's running on fire drills. Everybody's running on, we always got an emergency. We always have to work on this KPI. We always have to do that. Um, and I would not have to worry about that with my teams. When I took over the second region I had, at first, yes, I had to do a lot of turning around. I actually had a manager who would not, for instance, I had a manager who would not stick to the fucking schedule. And I was known, and they had known this, and I had been very vocal to everybody about it. Like, hey, I'm going to be in the markets. I'm going to be in the field. I am going to be dropping in. I'll have some, things that I'll drop in that I'm scheduled for. Other times, I'm just going to be in the area and I'm just going to swing by, right? Maybe I got to take care of something and you have office space in the back, right? Hey, so And I would always do it, and I was always schedule like if I was gonna do a drop in, I would make sure it was during when a manager's gonna be on staff, right? So because I had access to everybody's schedule, so I was like, all right, they'll be there. And it wasn't like I was there at like 9:30 taking a look to see if they're gonna open the store on time. It's like, no, I'd show up after the store was scheduled to be open. So come to my surprise that on multiple occasions when I show up, the store is not open on time. And it's not like, okay, they're 5 minutes closed. It's like this store hasn't, it's 15 minutes past opening and nobody is here yet. Like, what the fuck's going on? Um, or it's like I'm showing up at a certain hour where I'm expecting the manager to be there, and it's a bunch of it's the rest of the employees except for the manager. I'm like, hey, where's the manager? I'm not saying names, obviously, right? And like, oh, yeah, he's gonna be coming in later. I was like, well, on the schedule, he's scheduled for this time. I'm expecting him here. Like, what the hell's going on? And obviously, one time I can understand maybe something came up. I'm not gonna micromanage you. You handle your stuff, right? But when it's like every other day that I'm swinging by, it's like, no. So I pulled him aside and I was like, hey, so I've noticed a trend. The store's not opening on time. You're not sticking to the schedule, right? He's like, well, it's like, no, it's not a will just whatever. This is the schedule. You owe your team to have the schedule set and stick to the schedule. That way they can have a fucking life outside of the store. It is not, okay, I'm just going to play this by whatever my whim is. It's like, no, we have to give them dependency that we have to give them that we are going to be dependent, right? We are dependable. What we're saying is this is the schedule, this is the schedule. It needs to be written down. And if it has to be changed, okay, it can be changed. But don't just put something in the system to put something in the system and not stick to it. Don't be like, okay, I'm just throwing that in. But hey, guys, I need, it's like, no, no, have your schedule done. And I would always push my teams to have their schedule done for the month. And I would let them know, like, have it like kind of set for the month, but realistically, it's going to be 2 weeks out. And let your team know that because obviously things will change. Maybe somebody's going to ask for PTO. And the requirement was that they request PTO at least 2 weeks in advance, right? So somebody's going to ask for PTO or maybe ask for days off. So it'll change things. But at least we kind of have an idea and they have, a working concept of what we're at and where we're scheduled. So if we need to really make adjustments, we can do it. If I need to pull somebody from a different location, we have that foresight to be able to do it. But none of this that I'm just putting something in the system, I'm not going to follow it. I'm just going to do whatever I want. That's not being a leader. That's not you are not respecting your people and their time. They got a life outside of what the store does, and you got to respect that. You can't just call them the night before and be like, "Hey, I don't feel like going in the morning. You go in it for me." It's like, no, we're not doing that, right? If you want to do that, there's the door. We're not going to do that in my team. Um, and I was like, here's the thing. I could write you up for this because this is like abysmal. Like, I am not going to do that right now because there's obviously, this is a habit that you were allowed to do previously, and that's not happening. And I'm telling you right now, that is not going to continue. So, obviously be warned. I'm not going to document this. I don't want this going on file because then that's going to be a bigger issue for you. Because then LP is going to want to take a look and see what's going on. I'm giving you the opportunity to correct the behavior, but just know that I am more heavily focused at this location because of that. So, because performance is down, and because of this, I understand why performance is down. There's a couple other factors, right? But like that was a big one. It's like you can't bullshit and expect that I'm going to take your side. I can't defend you. Like when, corporate takes a look at the cameras and they're wondering why, you're not there, like that's an issue. We got to make sure that gets taken care of and that gets handled. And it did. It got corrected. And then the team was a lot happier after that. Like you could physically tell that the team was just so much better and so much happier at what they were doing because they at least had a schedule that fucking stuck. They knew what was going on. They knew that they weren't going to get a call the night before, like every other day, telling them, "Oh yeah, your schedule's changed. This is actually what it is." Um, it's like, no, you got to respect your people. You got to give them that benefit, right? And as a leader, you guys got to understand this, right? When people call out, if you can't find anybody to take that spot, you need to jump in. There's not a, well, I can't cover the shift because I'm a manager. It's like, no, as a manager, you're expected to cover the shift. If you can't find anybody else to do it, it's not anybody else's responsibility if they can't fill it. Because guess what? You call somebody and they're on PTO and somebody called out because they're extremely sick and they can't come in and you don't have anybody else. If you definitely cannot do it, first reach out to another peer in the area and see if you can pull somebody from their location. Nobody's able to do it. I mean, if you absolutely cannot do it, reach out to your area or district manager and let them know, like, hey, I'm having a bit of an issue. This is the case, right? Uh, and you'd be surprised. I would step in for them to, cover a few hours if my team really, really needed it. But oftentimes I was able to find somebody, right? Because all it took maybe was like somebody really had the ability to do it. They just didn't want to do it. It's like, okay, I got to have somebody come in, right? Or I would have like another manager cover for them at their area while that happened. There's always ways you can work it, right? But you have to know your process. You have to have something in place to be able to do it. And the numbers, the data is always going to back something up, right? So when it comes to, once again, your sales training, your development, you have to have the numbers. You have to know what close rates are. You want to know where you're standing when it comes to certain KPIs. That way you understand, all right, I have an employee that's selling a tremendous amount of volume, but their KPIs are skinny. They're so empty, right? So that's the individual I need to focus on the most because that's where I'm going to get the biggest boost when it comes to my KPIs. Whereas I may have other like another individual employee B that they're selling not as much, but their KPIs are well rounded. So where am I going to see the biggest boost between employees? The employee that's well rounded, even though they're not pushing the vast amount of volume, or the employee that's pushing a vast amount of volume, but their KPIs aren't there. That is my first person. Because once I get their KPIs up, if it matches one or two things is going to happen. Their KPIs are going to match their volume, and that's going to be a much bigger boost in performance. Or their volume is going to go down, but their KPIs are going to increase. And the increase in KPIs is actually going to offset the decrease in volume. So now I'm becoming a lot more well-rounded overall. So volumes should technically almost stay the same, right? Where the person has a lot of volume and they improve their KPIs to that volume, is only going to increase the overall volume that we're selling by that much, right? So that's where we have to take a look at because the well-rounded one, I'm not going to punish them because they're not, selling at the volume that employee A is selling. Employee A is costing me a lot more money because their metrics aren't there, right? So if you're talking about like the wireless retail industry, you're talking about that individual is costing you VBAs, right? Or VAPs, I'm sorry, because they're affecting the value bonuses or the volume bonuses. That's a big one where employee B is adding to that bonus pool. Employee A is actually taken away from the bonus pool because they're increasing the number of opportunities being sold, but they're empty. So now I need to make up that amount of volume that's being sold. So that's where you got to focus on, right? Because VABs are super important to making sure that you're attaining those. That's why the KPIs are very important. And that's why commission structures change. Commission structures don't change because the company decided, right? The wireless retailer decided that I'm going to change the flavor of the month. That's not the case. The reason the commission structure changes is because the wireless carrier is changing the VAPs. They're changing the focus on what they want attained. And they're telling the companies, hey, you guys are doing overall well. And just so you guys are aware, oftentimes, depending on your volume that you're producing, the VAPs are going to be particular to your company. All right. So it's like, hey, if you guys we're changing the focus. This month is going to be this, or this quarter it's going to be this, right? So we're going to decrease the payout on this, and we're going to increase the payout on that. But this is in order to be able to attain that payout. This is what needs to be attained. Boom. Commission structure comes out, and obviously they don't do that mid-month. They give notice that that's what's going to happen, so that commission structures can be adjusted properly, right? But that's the reason why. And that's an important aspect to understand because it's where we need to focus, where we need to change our attention to. And this is why I've always told my employees that we want to be well-rounded sellers and we want to make sure that our KPIs are very important because when that change happens, that shift, we don't have to pivot so hard. It's a minor change that we're performing. It's a small pivot and we're getting to where we need to attain our goals, right? That's the important aspect of it. And as a leader, it's showcasing it. You're leading, you're shepherding your team on the performance. You're letting them know, hey, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it, right? You're not going to be able to talk to everybody at once, but you want to make sure that the message gets across to the majority of the team that you have. That way you guys can get after those metrics, get after those KPIs. Training and development, that is why it's important. And when you have the data to back it up, it makes the entire process easier. And the data doesn't just have to be, as we mentioned, right, on the sales aspect. What was I talking about earlier when I started the feed? I was talking about the recruitment side of it. I was talking about the hiring aspect of it. We're keeping track of your applicants and where they're at in the process is super important. That way you can understand if you have a hole somewhere, whether it's in the actual application system, right? The applicant process with your recruiter, with your HR department, whoever handles the interviewing and the hiring. Okay. Is it with them? Or is it that my field team is telling me we don't have quality candidates coming in, but we do. We're just not focusing on them. Because smaller companies, I get it. You don't have recruiters. Your field salespeople are the ones that are determining who's coming in, who's doing the interview, who's getting interviewed. Um, and when they don't have a system and they're just going with their gut feeling, that process is going to affect you even more because you can't teach the next person up how to just go with my gut feeling because my gut feeling is separate than your gut feeling. You and I don't have the same tastes when it comes to anything. We can be alike in a lot of things, right? Very similar. But when you're doing an interview and a candidate answers a question a certain way and you're just going with a gut feeling, well, they didn't really smile at the end of that. Well, they didn't really tell me that they achieved the goal they wanted to achieve after that. It's like, yeah, but listen, when you have a method, and even though they didn't attain the goal that you wanted, that you wanted to hear, their thought process, the actions they took, right? That shows you that they're capable of making adjustments, that they actually thought through it. They created a process to get after it. And the process didn't create or didn't give them the result that they wanted, but they also talked about how they pivoted and ended up getting a different result, and they still were able to move forward. That's super important. And oftentimes that gets overlooked when you don't have an actual process for the interview system. It's the same thing. It's a sales process. You gotta have to know what you're doing. Now it's kind of flipped a little bit, um, but you're still very much so in a sales process. Okay. So that's kind of the conversation points. Data is important. Tracking data is important. Being able to read the data. I get it. You can manipulate data all you want. When you have the raw data, you can manipulate it to look however you want. When you know what you're looking at, though, that's the important aspect of it. You have to understand what you're reading, what that's telling you. And that's going to make things a lot easier for you, especially if you want to grow, especially if you want to make sure that your operations are sound, have processes in place. You can automate some of those processes so it doesn't take time. For instance, that sheet, it's on a Google Sheets because I want people to be able to copy it themselves and use it for themselves and adjust it how they see fit. And that makes things a lot easier for people. And when you can do that and you can automate that and you can see instead of having to manually calculate everything I have 50 employees or 50 candidates in the shoot. How many of them have gone through the interview process or the phone interview? How many of them have completed the personality assessment? Right? When you're trying to go through and you're manually inputting that information instead of having a document where you just enter it and it automatically pops up in a different area, you would be surprised how many people don't know how to do that. Uh, I'll tell you, the first time that I actually had to do real work, 'cause I've used Excel for years, right? For decades. I know I'm aging myself. Um, but I mean, I've used it for decades and I thought I was really good. And I remember when I got moved the first time into the corporate office and I had to do reports, I was literally fielding everything by hand. And I was so one, frustrated because I was like, how the hell does this take so long? Like, there's got to be an easier way. And obviously, this is way before TikTok. This is way before anything. And I was like, I didn't know what I was needing to look for to make things faster. And I remember going into a meeting with my director at the time, and you know, I'm looking at him in awe, like, he's doing a couple of things. And what took me like an hour or two to do, he did it in 5 minutes. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What did you do? He said, what do you mean? I was like, what did you do? Because I've been stuck in what it took me an hour to do. You knocked out in like a minute or two. He's like, oh, I just use this. I was like, that is, he's like, you didn't know that? I was like, no. He's like, nobody told you about that. I was like, no, I've been frustrated this whole time because of that. He's like, okay. He's like, I thought you were just like really slow on things. I was like, no, like it is frustrating. I didn't know what I was looking at, or I didn't even know this existed. So I didn't know what I didn't know. He's like, yeah, well, that's valid. I was like, okay. So I ended up pumping out the reports a lot faster, being able to pull data a lot faster after that one. And it was a quick 5 minute meeting. I swear to God, I would have paid $100 just to learn that, right? Um, Even though it was just 5 minutes, I would have paid $100 on the spot just to fucking learn that because that was that impactful. And I was like, okay. So after that, I was able to pull data a lot faster, and it just made my life easier because now I didn't have to prep, 2 hours before or feel like I had to take this homework home, right? This project home to finish it up because I needed it done for, call that I was doing the next day with VPs and regional directors. It was like, no, okay, boom, I got it. I can spit out the information a lot faster. It was a lot cleaner, and a lot more accurate. There's a lot of stuff out there that makes your life easier, and it's about using it. And you're not going to know what you don't know until somebody brings it up to you, right? Or they ask you, like, hey, are you guys familiar with this? And at first, it may seem like it's very redundant, but you would be surprised, even with your salespeople. You would be surprised how a lot of them, especially if they're not hitting certain metrics, there's a disconnect. There's something that they're not familiar with or that they don't know, and they don't know how to bring it up. They don't know how to talk about it. So it makes it tough to be able to fix it. Because when they don't know what it is, how do you expect somebody to, fix something they don't know is broken or that they're missing? That's where making sure that you understand the basics and you go through and you focus on training always the basics. That makes things easier. And then you give your team the opportunity to know that, hey, you can ask questions. Don't feel that, you're going to be held back. There's no stupid questions, right? Have that conversation. Make sure they understand that they can bring up suggestions. They can ask questions and you're not going to ridicule them because you don't know, especially if you took over a market, you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what was skipped over for them in training, what was never even brought up. That's huge. That's also one of the reasons why I always go back and whenever I take over new areas, I make sure everybody understands the commission structure. It's not about knowing the paper. I don't want you to know that you get paid this for that. I want you to understand that if you want to make 50, 60, $70,000 a year as just a regular sales associate, what you need to hit to attain so that we can build the framework for you to get after so that okay, I got to hit this, 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 and this. And that's going to get me towards it. So I know. And then we break that down even more. I need to, work with this many clients, I need to kind of increase my average. It makes things a lot more feasible, a lot easier on the brain because you can visualize it and you can see it and you can see yourself actually getting it done and taking care of it. And that's we're going to the basics and having a system in place is important. Stick to your systems. Everything works, right? When you're in sales, if it's working 60% of the time, it works every time, right? Because once again, it's never going to work 100% of the time, ever. But when it's working the majority of the time, that's going to be a winner. You're going to get more wins than losses, and that's where you go. All right. So I'll leave it at that today, guys. Any questions you guys have, feel free, right? Message me, DM me, let me know. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That way you guys don't miss any of this. And uh, I will say this because I know I talked about it the other day. I haven't made it live. I made some tweaks. The speech program I was talking about uh, to help, with your speech rate, to be a lot more engaging. I was fine tuning it yesterday and it's coming out really nice. I actually am liking it. I just tweaked it because at first it was just spitting out the same script over and over again. Finally fixed that so it actually spits out kind of different of script. And I'm adding the ability to add in your own personal script that you want to do, right? But I'm still trying to fine tune it so that it's only a certain length. But it's actually pretty cool. I like it because it actually breaks down like the sections that says, all right, you need to kind of work on this. And the scoring method's actually pretty cool. Maybe I'll do a live demo of it this week, but I'm pretty excited for it. Like I said, guys, any questions, let me know, contact me directly, and I'll catch you on the next one.